Good afternoon, Cougar Nation, and welcome into a Cougar Tracks, Cougar Sports Saturday mashup. You see that guy to my right? If you're watching on the live stream, it's Matt Baiamonte, Cougar Sports Saturday host on KSL News Radio every Saturday from noon to 3, alongside with me on the legacy home of the Cougars. You've also probably heard his voice on Cougar Tracks many times, those Twitter spaces post-game. But, since we don't have a Cougar Sports Saturday this week, General Conference for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints takes priority this weekend. We had to get together and talk BYU, Utah State, as the Cougars and Aggies square off for the 91st time all time and maybe the last, Matt. So it's good to chat with you and preview this BYU Utah State matchup.
Yeah, this is a sneaky, interesting matchup from a storylines perspective, not necessarily from is this going to be a crazy game? Is it going to be a close game? I mean, it's a rivalry game, so you can't throw out the notion that it could be a closer than the experts think Lee Corso reference type of game. But Utah State has not been playing good football, Mitch. And so there's no reason a BYU team can't win by double digits. I'm not going to put a number on it because tomorrow at the press box, I will be trying to imitate Cowboy Joe, the Wyoming mascot, after that painful bet with the unrivaled team. So I got my cowboy hat, got delivered yesterday. So I'm not going to put a number on it, but BYU is a double-digit favorite. I mean, they're a better football team. So from a matchup perspective, I'm not sure how interesting it is, but there are a lot of interesting storylines within this matchup.
BYU should win by 4 touchdowns in this game. I mean, I think they should.
Are you gonna do we need to put something on the line here?
They should, because BYU is the 19th ranked team in the country, and if they are living up to that ranking, they should handle a Utah State team that rolls in with a 1-3 record, has been losing to the likes of Weber State, UNLV. They're just struggling. But you got to think that, no pun intended, they're going to circle the wagons and try to get right for this BYU game, because Utah State, we know they love this game up in Logan. And honestly, Matt, I will say that I've enjoyed this matchup a lot more in the Independence era. I think it's been a fun annual matchup. I think sometimes in Independence, I tend to forget how much fun it can sometimes be to have that annual continuity with a certain opponent, where you have that built-in year after year, like, oh, this happened that year, this happened this season, and just that fuel that builds up with a matchup. That's lacked in Independence, but this BYU Utah State series has been a lot of fun during the Independence era, but seems like it's coming to a close.
It's gotten a lot more fun too as Utah State's gotten better, because there was a long period of time where this was just a butt whooping, so to speak. But ever since the first time around with Gary Anderson, I think the series has gotten a lot better. And then Matt Wells had some good teams. Last year's Utah State was very good, which is last year's success with the Aggies is a little puzzling as to why it's been so 180 from last year. I mean, this is a team who won the Mountain West, and they looked good in their bowl game, and they were without their starting quarterback in that bowl game, and they still won the bowl game down in LA in SoFi Stadium. So for them to have struggled as much as they have this year, especially offensively, if you look at Logan Bonner's numbers the past 2 weeks, they are not good. Against Weber State, he only completed 39% of his passes, Mitch. 39% of his passes. He nearly doubled that against UNLV, but it was still sub 70, and he threw 5 interceptions. So his struggles, I think, have been one of the reasons the offense has struggled, and their overall team struggles, I think, are why they are in the position that they are. And I don't think anyone predicted that Utah State's offense would be this bad, and that's why they're 1-3.
Well, I thought the conversation around Bonner, he was nowhere near a Jaron Hall type. We had on our sister station, the KSL Sports Zone, the 60 and 60, where the local media and the KSL Sports family got to vote on all the players in the state of Utah. And I thought it was kind of insane that Cam Rising was above Jaron Hall. I thought it was even more crazy that Logan Bonner was number 5. Now, it's not a knock on Bonner. He's had a decorated career, being with Blake Anderson was there at Arkansas State, and then Utah State. They won a conference title last year, but I just thought if that's a sizable gap, and you're seeing, all the talk we had this offseason about Jaren Hall, and I think some people might have thought, man, these guys are just laying it thick for Jaren Hall. Like, are these guys? What are they watching? But it's like you can just tell the way that Jaren is operating, and you're seeing it. The end of Thursday night will be a national showcase for Jaren Hall. I know that the NFL is on, and that's on Amazon. But if you want to go on linear TV and watch a football game, it's only BYU on Thursday night. And I'm telling you, Jaren Hall is going to be impressive. And I think this is going to be the game. You're going to have Lewis Riddick gassing him up. He's going to be hyping this kid up. And he's going to be probably saying, like, this is a top 10 pick, I bet. Jaren's going to be amazing. Logan Bonner, okay player. But I've said since that devastating loss to Weber State, he's got to get benched. And if they had Laga, I think that would be a situation where maybe he can give them a jolt of life because he won that bowl game for him. But hey, we'll see what happens.
And they also have, let's also throw into the mix Levi Williams, right? So the transfer from Wyoming, who was very impressive, led Wyoming to a great season last year. So, who knows what's going to happen, but it's not like they don't have options if they want to go that route. So we'll have to see. I think if you're a BYU fan, though, you want Logan Bonner to play because you had success against Logan Bonner last year, and he's struggling this year. So, what happens there will be interesting and noteworthy. But BYU, Mitch, certainly has a decisive edge at quarterback. Jaren Hall, I mean, if you're no stranger to Cougar Tracks or Cougar Sports Saturday, you know that me and Mitch think Jaren Hall is phenomenal. I personally believe he's played his way into the first round of the NFL draft, because there's things that I believe about Jaren Hall, Mitch, that will benefit him after the season. And that's going to be, he's already getting incredible publicity for his leadership, and it's well-deserved. Against Baylor, there was the hug with Jake Oldroyd. Last week, it was we witnessed this. We were in the press conference room. Miles Davis showed up alone. I'm like, he deserves to be alone. He had a great game. And Jaren came in very late. Why was he late? Well, we all know now why he was late. That was because he was taking pictures and signing autographs. So he cares about the fan base. He cares about the team. He cares about the game. And once he gets to the interview section of the NFL draft process, that's where his stock is going to continue to rise. To me, not only right now, he's being talked about from, like, Todd McShay has him on what, the fourth or fifth best quarterback behind Will Levis from Kentucky.
Which Jaren's better than Will Levis.
I was just going to say, I think when it's all said and done, Jaren will be the third quarterback taken in the NFL draft, barring some catastrophic injury. I just think he's playing his way into that mix, and he's the best quarterback in the state. I don't think it's that close.
Neither do I. I think Jaren Hall is a fantastic player, and I think that I think he's gonna have another big game. What's going to be interesting, though, is in that same backfield with Jaren is BYU's running back situation. Last week, Chris Brooks was dealing with a little bit of hamstring tightness, but Kalani has not used that as any sort of excuse for Chris Brooks, to the point where, Matt, I'm looking at it from the way that Kalani has framed this. It feels like Chris Brooks got benched. That's what it feels like to me, based on Kalani's commentary. He was straight up asked on Monday, is it injury related or is it performance based? Kalani did not squash it and just pounce on the injury side. Miles Davis is now a co-starter along with Lopini and Chris Brooks. Do you think we're going to see Miles Davis get a big lion's share of the carries coming up tomorrow night?
No, I don't. I think we will see Miles Davis, but I think it will be more balanced in this game, just because I feel like you owe that to Lopini and Chris Brooks. Miles Davis played well. If you take out his big run, he averaged 5 yards a carry. That's double, triple what they were doing in the games previous. So that is a significant development. However, I think what's underrated here is that Chris Brooks averaged 6 yards per carry. He only just carried the ball 2 times, Mitch. So it's not like Chris Brooks went out there and had 2 negative plays and was no good. I feel like you owe it to Chris and Lopini to still give them opportunities. Now, if it is truly a situation, Mitch, where it is the hot hand, I'm on board with that. I'm totally on board with that. But it can't be a situation where Miles gets 18 carries and the other guys get 2 or 3, because I don't think that's fair. I don't think that Chris Brooks and Lupini were bad. I know that Kalani was mentioned that you can't put it all on the offensive line. Well, in those two games, like kind of, I'd put it mostly on. I'd put it on the offensive line. I don't think that was Chris Brooks and Lupini were very seldomly getting to the next level without having contact. How's that? I don't see how that's a running back thing. If you're expecting the running backs to make people miss behind the line of scrimmage, that's still an offensive line thing. So I'm not sold that the offensive line from the run game is fixed. Now, in the second half, there were very encouraging signs that the run game was getting better on the offensive side of the ball and on the defensive side of the ball. So I liked that. But to answer your question, I think it needs to be running back by committee. And then if someone is just killing it, go with them. But I don't think Miles Davis, and as great as he played, he was awesome. I still wouldn't say that performance alone means you're RB1 and the other guys don't play. I'm not ready to go there.
I'm with you on that because I still think that Brooks and Lupini deserve a chance to play. People have asked about Jackson McChesney. He got banged up in the Baylor game, so he's still with another injury. McChesney feels like anytime he just always gets banged up. Jackson McChesney, so he's a little bit nicked up because there was another guy. I'm thinking, because I felt like Miles Davis is really good, but I also think McChesney's good too. I think that the Miles Davis conversation, though, a little bit premature to just anoint him RB1 from the fan base. Yes. And look, fans enjoy it. Like, he was a great player last week, and you always enjoy a win. Sometimes I think as media, we sometimes get a little bit jaded and cynical sometimes. Between, but at the same time, against Arkansas, I don't know yet. I still feel like that's an incomplete, that I'm not ready to just say he's ready to go. But Wyoming's defensive line was better than I think people give them credit for.
But there was a lot of yards gained in the second half too, though, when they had gotten beaten down. So not taking anything away from Miles, he deserves to be on the field, but so do the other guys. And I think
that's why it should still be. That's why it should still be a hot hand. And I think you're right. I think that's why it should not be suddenly all in on Miles Davis. Like,
this isn't a Tyler Algier situation in 2020.
Yeah, exactly. Great way to put it. BYU, Utah State kickoff is at 6:00. Pregame starts on KSL at 4 p.m. So tune in to 102.7 FM and 1160 AM. Your legacy home of the Cougars, also the KSL News Radio app. Defensively, Matt, I thought there was once again drives where Wyoming last week was having success and eating up the clock and keeping BYU's high-powered offense off the field. It got fixed a little bit in that second half, but what are you expecting from BYU's defense against the Ags?
I expect there to be a Wyoming-type performance. I think that there will be moments where they look really good, but you cannot discount the injuries. I know that Max Tooley is going to return, but Malik Moore's not returning, so you got to figure out the safety position now. We'll have to see on Earl Mariner. Probably a game time decision for him, but I really liked what they did in the second half with the run game. The thing that I thought was a little interesting was commentary from Elisa Tuiaki that in the opening drives, it wasn't scheme related. It was just missed tackles. Now, in the Oregon game, I thought missed tackles were in abundance. It was just blatant missed tackles. I didn't feel that way watching the Wyoming game live. Maybe I need to give it another rewatch, but I didn't feel like there was just missed tackles galore. So I'm very interested to see how the defense responds in the run game perspective. My biggest concern with the defense, though, aside from the run game, where are the turnovers? We are not seeing. Not only were you not seeing forced turnovers, we're seeing very few opportunities for forced turnovers. I can only think of one in the Wyoming game where I think it was Ethan Slade who came running across the field and full extension stretch tried to intercept the pass, which would have been an amazing interception. So you can't even call that really a dropped interception. But I'm not seeing the opportunities. And the few unforced opportunities, Mitch, BYU is not taking advantage of. Andrew Peasley drops a snap at one point. No one is even near being able to recover that missed snap. So I'm just not seeing And there was another punt return muffed too. Where what was Keenan Peely doing? He needs to be on that. So they are not forcing turnovers, and that is a concern to me because as much as we love Jaron Hall and his ability to protect the football, can we expect one interception for the rest of the year? There's got to be a turnover at some point. The defense needs to be able to neutralize that with forcing turnovers, which they haven't been able to do.
It's something that I talked about with Tyler Batty in this week's edition of Cougar Tracks. I highly recommend people go listen to it. Even Tyler said that they're frustrated that they have not forced more turnovers. I think, gauging from his commentary, BYU is not a defense that's going to confuse and create this confusion. Like you think back in the day of the Bronco era, it was like confusion everywhere. They're moving around and they are just making these quarterbacks head spin. Like, where are these guys going? I can't keep them straight. And then there's going to be all these opportunities. Whereas Tuiaki's defense is going to be sound. It's going to be assignment based, 111th, this and that. And it's just a matter of athletes got to go make some plays. Do they have enough athletes to go make the plays? Who knows? It'll be interesting to see if BYU can get a few more takeaways. You brought up Malik Moore. I kind of wondered too, because he had that picture. And by the way, shout out to all the moms on the BYU football team this week. They've been giving just great details of the injury reports. I'm kidding. It's just kind of funny. Like,
you're not kidding, and I support it. All the moms continue to give us the info we're not getting.
This vault of BYU injury reports. And look, some of this is BYU coaches have been waiting on these doctors to clear some of these guys. Like Gunnar Romney, week after week, he's going on the KSL Sports Zone and saying, I'm ready to play. I got to get the doctor to clear me. And Kalani's got to answer to us jackals and be like, hey, where is he, Kalani? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a doctor, guys.
Kalani's not going to hear this, but if you do, can you have a better answer for these injury questions? Because the I'm not a doctor / he's still being evaluated. No. Gunnar Romney was done being evaluated on the second day of camp, and we knew what the injury was. You don't have to tell us, but just say he's out for a month.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I'm not gonna lie, it was kind of refreshing at basketball practice on Monday. Like, Trevor Nell's out. 3 to 4 months. We're never gonna ask about it again.
We'll never ask again. He's still being evaluated. There was an injury a month ago, but he's still under evaluation. Come on, we're not that dumb.
I do think that Kalani, some of it is with these doctors in clearing. But hey, I mean, it's tough. And with football, it was nice this week though, because he just straight up said, "Hey, Thule, you're back. Tuioti Mariner back. Gabe Summers back." Terry Anderson writes, "Why would Kalani want the competition to know? Is that a competitive advantage?"
No,
I don't.
It's not.
I've it, Gunnar Romney's lacerated kidney. That would be the thought. I mean, it could be. At the end of the day, like BYU, you're going to be a wide zone offense. Haven't been much wide zone at times this year, but it's like you kind of know what BYU is. And I don't know. I just think that the whole competitive advantage thing, at the end of the day, you got to execute. Like BYU could, you can know everyone that's out there, all the personnel for BYU, a clean bill of health, and you ultimately have to execute.
And here's the thing too, Mitch, if it is an advantage, it's for a brief moment. And then these guys figure it out, and it comes back to what you just talked about, execution. So, don't tell me that Chase Roberts' big second half against Baylor was because they didn't know. Like, they knew that he was good by that point, and they still couldn't stop him because he was playing good football.
The value, though, Matt, is it's been nice for BYU because it's given them a chance to turn into their depth, and I think the wide receiver depth has been highlighted. Terry also writes, I think you all make a big deal out of nothing. We're not making a big deal out of nothing. I think it's just for the fans. Like, do you want to watch a BYU game with Puka or Gunnar, or just kind of know? Like, sometimes these people pay this money to know about certain things, or certain companies now have NIL money invested in these athletes. They don't know the status of these guys.
Well, and
I've always go ahead.
I was just going to say, I'll quickly add, I think it's doing a slight disservice to the guys who are going to play too, because you and I are asking, or we're the storylines we write. The story is this guy. You wrote this piece last week. Here's the injury update. What about this? What about that? When the storyline should be, Chase Roberts, Cody Epps, and Keanu Hill, these guys are having a great year, but we're not focusing on it because we're worried. Right. We're wondering when Puka and Gunnar are going to come back every single week. So I think there is a slight disservice to the guys actually playing when we're all focused on when the other guys are going to return.
Yeah, I mean, it's at the end of the day, right? Terry's right. I think we're right too. Where it's just like, it's not that big of a deal because we're ultimately going to watch the game. The eye in the sky won't lie. We'll all watch it. We're all going to cover it. But just sometimes I think that you're right. Like I think if we knew exactly like the situation of guys, then we can focus our efforts in highlighting a great story of Cody Epps. We had him on last week on Cougar Sports Saturday, and what a great interview he is. I mean, it is what it is. It's just the weekly grind of college football. Injuries happen. You hope that BYU doesn't have the devastating ones for going forward, because that's, knock on wood, they have not had the season-ending injury. This BYU Utah State game is frightening because it seems like some catastrophic quarterback thing always happens. So again, knock on wood, nothing happens with Jaron or Logan Bonner or whoever it may be in this game. We don't want to see any injuries happen to anyone. But it's just it comes with college football. It's injuries are a thing in this sport. Let me ask you this before we wrap things up, Matt. BYU Utah State 91st meeting all time. Second most meetings against an individual school next to Utah for BYU. But this game is not on any future schedules for the foreseeable future. And honestly, I don't know if it will be back anytime soon. Do you want BYU Utah State back on the future schedules when BYU's in the Big 12? Kalani Sitake said he would like it back. What say you?
Yeah, absolutely. I just don't want it every year. So I think if there was some kind of rotation, this might get some people their feathers ruffled a little bit. But if there was some kind of rotation where you had a home and home rotating with Utah State, Utah, Boise State, and it was just kind of circling through, sign me up for that, because I definitely would like Utah State on the schedule. I just, with so few non-conference opportunities now, I don't want to lose what I love about independence, which is these coast-to-coast games. And for me, I'm speaking for myself, if I had to choose between Utah State or a trip out to the East Coast to play, and I don't know, I'm just throwing some run-of-the-mill team out there, but to play, Duke, maybe that's a bad example after the volleyball situation, but because that's probably not going to happen.
Yeah,
that's not going to happen. Let's go with East Coast against Louisville or Utah State. Yeah. I want to play Louisville. So, and there's not really room for both, because you can't play Utah State, Louisville, then off to the Big 12. Like that's not the precedent college football set. Whether or not we want it to be that, I think we all want it to be that way. It's just not that way. So that's a long-winded answer saying I do want to see it played again, but I don't want it to be an annual thing.
I hope in the 12-team college football playoff era, Matt, we see teams
beef it up.
Like in Alabama that set the bar and say, we're done playing the FCS team. We're going to play 12 FBS teams. And I bring this up, the 12-team playoff, because you're not penalized to play a Utah State. Like, because the thought with a Utah State would be, well, what's the gain for BYU? Because quite frankly, there's not much gain. It's just basically maintaining history. But I think in the 12-team playoff era, there is some value where you're maintaining history. You're getting that local regional buy-in. And say if you did lose the game, if you go up to Logan and you run into a buzzsaw up there, you're not penalized. Your season's not over, because you can go into the Big 12. And if you win the Big 12, you're going to have an automatic bid, most likely, assuming, Big 12 is one of the top 6 conferences that year, which they probably will. You're going to go to the playoff. So I think there is now more room to play a Utah State, because I'll tell you what, when I see the announcement of BYU Southern Illinois to open a 2024 season, I get it in the grand scheme of how football works now, but I don't want to watch that game. I don't want to watch BYU Southern Illinois. Well, I'd rather watch BYU Utah State.
Yeah, well, you and I are sickos, and we'd find 15 story angles in that game to who are we watching? Are we getting into the 7 deep? Are we getting some true freshmen on the field? So, but look, if the question is, in a perfect world, what schedule would you like to have? I'll tell you what I would like to have. Utah and Utah State, and maybe you alternate Utah State and Boise State every year. and then 2 other fun independence types games like in Oregon or go back to the East Coast and play. I'm just throwing out, South Carolina or something, and then 8 conference games. That's what I would like to see. That's the world I want to live in, where these teams are playing really exciting matchups in September, and then you get into conference play, and it's okay to be 9-3, to win your conference and to go to the college football playoff. That's the world I want to live in. We just don't live in that world right now.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I think it will be interesting to see how the future Big 12 schedules are made up. We're going to likely see most likely the 2023 schedule sometime next month, which is exciting. Expected to be a 9 conference game slate. That's according to Tom Holmoe back at Media Day. Divisions, will they have that? We don't know. But it is unfortunate to see history sometimes go by the wayside. I will say, though, if BYU and Utah State ever rekindle anything, I do think you say maybe 2 for 1, 3 for 1. You make it very strict. Like
3
you're going to
for
get
1. That's hardcore.
Well, maybe and the reason I say that is because go look at the history of Power 5 teams going to Logan. It's Wake Forest recently. Wake Forest, no one's going to look at them as a big time program. I know they're doing well right now, but not a big football brand. And then Oregon back in the days of Joey Harrington. I don't know how on earth Utah State landed the Ducks to go to Logan. But they did back in the early 2000s when they were having guys on New York billboards and stuff. But that's it, though. Power 5 teams don't go to the Cache Valley. Utah, I think, did once in 2012. But just their stadium alone, less than 30,000 seats. BYU's got a pretty big fan base. They want to travel fans to games. You don't have the infrastructure to accommodate that. And that's one of the issues. But you know what? I do think there will be a day where we see BYU, Tom Holmoe, John Hartwell at Utah State. They rekindle something and get the series fired up. But, it's just you got to evolve. I want to see the FCS game gone, though. That is my big thing. And the argument, I asked Kalani about this last year, and he's like, everyone else in college football does it, so we're going to do it. It's like, okay, I get that. I hope that Saban, I hope that some of the leaders of the sport say enough's enough. We're done playing this game. I get it from the financial ecosystem of football, but I'd rather have BYU, Utah State than BYU, Sam Houston. I know it's FBS, but you know what I'm saying? Like, I don't want those games. If I'm going to get a game against an inferior opponent where BYU is a 3 or 4 touchdown favorite, I want it against the Aggies where it's a wagon wheel game, where there's a trophy at stake, not the Salukis from Southern Illinois. Like, give me a break. I don't want that.
Yeah, I'm with you on there. Quick question, last thing though. If you had to choose Utah every year or a rotation of the regional rivalries, what would you choose?
Rotation.
Yeah, me too.
I don't think you give Utah every year. I think that's done. Utah made that clear when BYU was independent. When BYU said, we will give you coveted top 3 weeks of the season inventory where BYU can get anyone. BYU was willing to say, we will play you in those first 3 weeks. We will designate a week for you. Just commit to us. They wouldn't. So now if I'm Tom Holmoe, I say, no way. Like, I would rather BYU make a bigger commitment to, not bigger commitment, but a commitment to Utah State and Boise than Utah. Because Utah, there's so much history. There's tons of tradition. Those games matter so much. I get all that. But that instance where Tom Holmoe was like, we will play you week 2. Just tell us, commit to us. We will rope it off and we will schedule our seasons around that game. Like, because you think about it now, Matt, like all those seasons in the first 4 weeks where BYU's playing Tennessee, they're playing Washington, they're playing USC, they're playing just the who's who of college football, Michigan, Nebraska, just go down the line. And BYU is willing to say, we will sacrifice those opportunities to play Utah. Like, that's how invested they were. And they basically got told, we're playing Michigan, we're playing Florida. See you later. Well, now BYU.
Isn't it ironic, though? It comes full circle for Utah that they really needed BYU on the schedule to help bolster the resume after losing to Florida. So
yeah, they played no one. They've played no one since Florida. I mean, they got Oregon State this week, but they've truly played no one since that game. I mean, they haven't had anyone with a pulse since that week 1 game. And, but I think Tom Holmoe kind of touched on it a couple months ago. I think it was on BYU TV. He's like, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something to the effect of, we're not going to play them every year. Like, and that was the first time he's ever said that, because he's typically like, I love the rivalry. I want to make that work. He's like, it's not going to happen probably every year. And you know what? I'm okay with that. Utah State, we will see when it actually happens. The problem for BYU too, as we close this up, they're not adding any more games between now and I think it's 2032. So we're probably talking a decade. We're not going to see BYU and Utah State. That's kind of weird. I mean, it's very strange. And I'm curious to see what happens in the Big 12 if BYU is given maybe the Thursday, Friday night spot leading into conference weekend, or does Big 12 say, yeah, that's nice, but you need to fill this time slot at 8:15 on Saturday night? I don't know how that will work with conference weekend, because ESPN and Independence, it was like, yeah, we'll work around women's conference. We'll work around priesthood session. We'll work around this. Big 12's like, we're going to put you in the spots where it gets the most eyeballs and the most revenue. And if it's Thursday, great. If it's not, you're going to probably play. So that's kind of an end of an era too this weekend as BYU gets ready for the weeknight tilt against the Aggies. Final score prediction, Matt, what do you got?
I'm going to go BYU. I'm going to go BYU 40, Utah State 17.
I like that. I think that BYU gets that 40 spot too. I'm going to say BYU 45. I'm going to say Utah State 20. I think they get maybe some cheap touchdown. Maybe Jaron makes some, not Jaron, but maybe some receiver fumbles a ball or running, but I don't know, something cheap. I think Utah State will get something and it'll make people go, oh no, like the underdog has life. Like, no, it's not happening. Just stay patient. So many knee-jerk reactions in first quarters of games. But yeah, 45-20, I think BYU rolls to a comfortable victory and moves to 4-1 and then sets the table for Las Vegas. I'm rolling the dice. I'm doing like the Seth Rogen was on Knocked Up, where he's like the dice roll, that dance years ago. Yeah, I'm doing that right now. BYU and Notre Dame next week. We will have a lot of coverage next week from that one. We're going to have like a special pregame on the radio leading up to kick. It's going to be on KSL 5 TV. We're going to have pre and post game shows on TV. Goodness gracious, like BYU and the Irish. We're going to wake up the echoes. We're going to probably tap into Rudy. We're going to get Rudy to run out the BYU flag. Rudy Rudiger. That's Rudy going to cheer for BYU because Rudy is now a member of the church. Lie.
That's a good question.
We will find out next week. Maybe that's the tease. We will tease that. We will track down Rudy and get him on our show and say, Rudy, who's the madman now? I will see you tomorrow. You are the madman tomorrow night as you dress up in a cowboy suit. You will see me in a cowboy
hat. I'm trying to track down a belt buckle. I don't think you're going to go full Woody here, but I thought about growing a mustache, but I can't grow facial hair, so that's not going to work. But I'll do my best.
It's going to be a lot of fun. Brett Pine, the media relations guy, is going to say, Matt, it's September 29th, not October 29th. Like, you're a month away from Halloween, and you're going to have to explain what just happened. The fight in Craig Bowles covered the spread.
What happened was the refs and also the lack of a turnover. So that's what happened.
The refs, shout out to them. Hopefully this new crew, hopefully you are just so much better than last week's group. My gosh, that group was brutal, was terrible, just downright awful. So that is the key storylines: the refs, BYU, the rivalry, the wagon wheel tomorrow night, and Matt dressing up like a cowboy. We got so much content. Like, we are just fulfilled. This is a blowout game potentially, and yet we are just loaded with great storylines, and you heard them all here on Cougar Tracks and Cougar Sports Saturday. Follow Matt on Twitter at Baiamonte Matt. Follow me at Mitch_Harper, and we will catch you next time on Cougar Sports Saturday, next Saturday from noon to 3 on KSL News Radio.